Before we start with this critique, there are a few caveats I need to make. Firstly, this video is part of a series of critiques, starting off with my point lookout critique, which will give you some information about the order of, and the reason for the existence of, these critiques. Additionally, I will not be factoring in the overarching New Vegas DLC storyline in this video. I'm saving that for later. And lastly, this video is an in-depth look at Old World Blues, meaning that it will contain spoilers not only for this DLC, but for any other new Fallout product, and possibly also the classic games. I recommend you play Fallout 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and all of the DLCs for Fallout 3 and New Vegas to story completion before watching this video. You don't have to, but if you want to avoid spoilers, that's your best bet. It's probably of no surprise to anyone that this is my favorite DLC. Old World Blues is largely considered by a majority of the rabid Fallout community to be the best Fallout New Vegas expansion, and by a lot of other people, the best Fallout expansion in existence. And there's a lot of good reasons for people thinking that, which we'll get into right now. Old World Blues was Fallout New Vegas' third proper DLC, and is by far its least serious and weirdest expansion, which is often a great combination. It takes place in a totally secluded research facility covered on all sides by a large mountain crater type thing. So what's the best way to get into the DLC? Crash satellite with a video projector and a teleporter. This very initial entrance to the DLC is actually quite good because of a few reasons. Firstly, it has zero level or quest requirements, meaning that players are free to access the content from the get-go. Now, I hear exactly what you're about to say, or at least what someone is about to say. Caption, you like the fact that Point Lookout did require the player to pay money to get on the boat. What's all this about? And that's true. That's very true. However, I personally see a big difference between a caps requirement and a level requirement. The first and most important reason is that caps are both a gameplay mechanic and a part of the Fallout world. They exist in the story and aren't just something that can only affect the player. A level up, on the other hand, is purely a gameplay mechanic. No one else in the entirety of Fallout ever levels up aside from your companions, which don't count, because they're just tied to your level. No one in the entire game world of Fallout levels up, or knows what a level up is, or can even comprehend the idea of what leveling up would be, because it simply doesn't exist in the reality, quote-unquote, of Fallout. You would never hear an NPC say, "A level 26 Deathclaw killed my daughter." You'd instead hear, "A Deathclaw killed my daughter." Leveling up is actually one of the few purely gamey mechanics. The inventory, health, iron sights, armor, caps, and last but not least, the most important element of a Fallout game, you already know what it is. Caravan! Hello, Caravan! Exist within the game world. So when I see a level requirement in Fallout, I know for a fact it's a barricade placed by the developer to ensure players can only access content when the developer thinks that they're ready, which runs in direct opposition to the franchise's greatest strength and core of its design philosophy, player freedom. And I know that player freedom is important to Fallout because Bethesda sure isn't shy about advertising it. It also just makes logical sense. Boats require tickets to have a ride on, tickets need to be purchased, you purchase things with money. Aside from that, the satellite also shows off the general nature of the DLC we're about to experience. 50s B-movie sci-fi. Oh, by the way, just in case you're wondering, it's been 3 minutes, and we are still in the Mojave. I'm a good reviewer, I swear, guys. We touch the satellite in all the right places. And we're treated to one of Fallout New Vegas' slideshows, which have always been one of my favorite aspects of this game. They effectively recap the story, so far, of whatever location the player is about to enter, and do so in a way that fits the visual style of the series, since slide projectors were invented around 1940, and have been the primary method of displaying a slideshow until computers came onto the scene. Not only that, but they're incredibly efficient from a development perspective. All they require is some 2D artwork, which could be concept art that you reuse, a narration from an already hired voice actor, a programmer, and a script for that narrator to work with. Compare that to the average game cutscene, which would require probably a script, a voice actor, a sound editor for all the possible background noise, a storyboard editor, and a programmer. They're also an incredibly productive way to do endings, since Fallout often has modular endings that change based on a player's decision and involve a lot of different groups of people, allow the developers to just mix and match the various slides that they make to show the various outcomes of the people you affected in the wasteland. For Obsidian, the difference between an entire group of people being wiped off the planet and them prospering in whatever land they live in is just the flick of a slide. Once the slideshow is over, we're teleported to the sink with nothing but a surgery gown, though we still have access to all of our gear, which is nice because the game isn't pretending to strip us of all of our stuff only to return it 5 minutes later, cause that would be fucking stupid, right? And allows us to explore the sink a bit. There's nothing to do in the actual sink itself, so the only other option we have is to go into the think tank, which places us in the pacification field, which is something so stupid that if this were any other DLC, this would not work. But because this is Old World Blues, you just have to let it slide. Inside the actual think tank itself, we're introduced to all of Big Mountain's esteemed scientists. Dr. Boris, Dr. 8, Dr. O, a sex offender, and this magnificent specimen you see here, Dr. Klein. The 5 think tank scientists highlight one of the most interesting aspects of Old World Blues. Old World Blues is quite possibly the most dialogue-heavy segment of any Fallout product. There is a lot of writing, and luckily for us, it's all great.
Did it just say something? Anyone catch that? Boros, you work with animals. Translate. It's a lobotomite! Here, in the dome! Oh, as if this situation couldn't get any worse. Now we've got lobotomites! Gala, get the spray before it excretes all over everything.
The scientists are all over the top and spend more time parodizing 1950s sci-fi movies and making jokes than they do actually giving out vital information. And it's great. Every scientist, though Klein and Mobius in particular, are hilarious. They make a lot of jokes. A whole lot. They speak a lot. In fact, they talk far too much. The think tank has by far the longest sequences of dialogue in any Fallout game. The introductory dialogue string can last up to 23 minutes if you go through and listen to all of it and don't even take any more than one optional dialogue choice. It's not the worst example of a game halting gameplay for a long time to get some story across, but the dialogue boxes are still far too long. They don't even benefit from any form of real animation, like, for example, MGS's cutscenes, which are also notoriously long. In fact, the extreme length of this dialogue does itself a disservice, because as it drags out, players are stuck in a dilemma. Either they give in to their impatience and get out into this brave new world of science that they've had dangled in front of their face like keys for the last 15 minutes, or they stick with the dialogue in case they don't want to miss something. Which for an RPG franchise with RPG playing fans is not the kind of dilemma you want to be stuck in. Most people play these games to hear stories and to go out and collect stuff and shoot things, and now you're being forced to choose between one or the other. Also, before we get into the next part of the review, I thought I'd interrupt everybody and do something very thematic for this DLC. Old World Blues is all about new technology, the cutting edge of human capacity. So I thought we would embrace this and try out some new technology of our own. Can you hear me? This is on my brand new microphone I got just for this YouTube channel. I hope you guys like it, because I really think the quality is way better, and if you don't like it, you can leave. The best part about it is, I don't have to shout just to get some decent audio now. However, let's get back to the review. There's a couple of other neat things about this conversation that I want to bring up here. First off, if you look at the models for each of the scientists, you'll see that they mix and match the monitor sizes to help express their personality, like how Dr. Boris is the most over-the-top one of the lot, and as such has all the largest monitors. Additionally, this is, I think, the only time the player can speak to multiple NPCs at once, and this is because the think tanks themselves have no mouth, so you don't have to worry about lip syncing. The way the game does vocals is by playing an audio file for each line. It automatically does lip syncing as well as it can. So, if you wanted, you could just, mix around some audio files around one NPC and have multiple people, quote-unquote, talk, but it'd all come from, like I said, one NPC who would be mouthing out all the different voices. So because they don't have to worry about one guy looking like they have a vocal disorder, they can have multiple people converse. However, they kinda mess this up, because Klein's brain will pulse with light whenever he speaks, which is there to make up for the fact that he has no lip syncing, but unfortunately, it will also pulse when his companions are talking. So for somebody who knows how the game works, like myself, you'll understand that this is because it's going over the lip syncing with the beeping instead of actually just having a mouth. It's still a pretty good trick though. And another very small detail that I like is that Klein, when his colleagues are talking, will actually turn in their direction for a moment like so. The fact that I had time to notice all of this probably just shows how long this initial dialogue sequence goes on for. Oh, by the way, they also chopped up a bunch of our organs. This meeting of the minds introduces us to all of our scientist friends, including our new scientist friend, Dr. Mobius, who is the main antagonist for Old World Blues. The scientists explain that Dr. Mobius is our big bad and that we need to recover a few pieces of advanced technology, an emitter antenna, a sneaky stealth suit, and a frequency for a sound gun that Dr. 8 prepares for us. They also provide us with the Sync's central intelligence, which allows us to power up the Sync itself. The Sync acts as both a player house and as the quest hub for the fairly large majority of all of the side content in Old World Blues. And this side content is good for a sort of paradoxic reason. The quest All My Friends Have Off Switches is, in my opinion, the only side quest in all of Old World Blues, and taxes the player with completing a massive searching quest to reactivate the personalities of the Sync. Or perhaps searching is the wrong word. I think maybe fetch is a better word, because it is a fetch quest. This quest has absolutely no reason to be of any quality, considering it's by far the most egregious example of a fetch quest in all of Fallout. It tasks you with just collecting holotapes to activate the Sync's various AIs. It really is nothing more. And the worst part is the quest will only dole out objectives in certain chunks, which can really make it go quite slow. Luckily, this quest is redeemed by its rewards. The Sync personalities are all fun and all full of personality. Their writing is as good as anything else in Old World Blues.
You got yourself some serious hurts there, friend. Cracked patella, 2 bruised ribs, and if I ain't mistaken, your brain's missing. Better climb in and let me have a look-see.
And they talk maybe 1% as much as the think tank, which is a good thing. They also all provide a valuable service to the player. The toaster can heat up weapons, the fertilizer can grow plants in salient green, the autoduck can heal you and let you respec your stats, the light switches can provide stat bonuses, and Muggy can make crafting materials. I mean, you know, once you fully upgrade all of them. Influencing people, or as I like to call it, Fetch Quest 2, is one of the worst quests in Fallout. It's the same thing as All My Friends Have Off Switches Part 1, but without any of the fun of discovering what new personality you're bringing home. It's just boring. And some people might not find the added functionality of all the AIs worth it. This details all of the side quest content in Old World Blues. That's it, I'm not kidding. While there isn't much in the way of quests, the actual map for Old World Blues is a blast to explore, with each research center housing its own crazy experiments. They give each dungeon its own Hold on, you know what? I'm gonna look up a synonym for personality. Okay, according to Thesaurus, complexion is a synonym for personality? Fuck it. The land itself is also pretty neat because of the interesting hexagonal landscape and the pipelines you can explore above all the normal ground. The only part of the world design that I think dropped the ball is enemy placement. The level designers decided just to place a complete assload of Night Stalkers all over the crater. They're a thematically satisfying enemy. They come from this location. They were invented here. But I think, personally, I wouldn't have minded if a few of their mob packs were replaced with, quite literally anything else. I mean, except spiders, of course, because spiders aren't even good as an enemy. They're completely who would even hire a spider for anything? Wait, what do you mean we still haven't started the main quest? Oh, crap, okay, I'm back, hold on. Main quest, right. So we've been sent out to find the 3 technologies for the think tank. We're going to go out and find them in the order that they've been described to us, meaning that we're going to be starting with the X2 antenna array first. To get the antenna, we just have to go a little bit south through a very easy dungeon and go on top of the roof. Once we retrieve the antenna, Dr. Mobius spawns in the worst thing ever. Fucking Robo-Scorpions. As much as I love the Robo-Scorpions, I hate fighting them. They deal a ton of damage and have tons of armor. They can switch between melee and ranged immediately without any delay, and when they die, they explode. Fuck you, that's why. However, they show off one of the neater elements of Old World Blues, the fact that, in my opinion, it was the very first initial transition from enemies being pretty bland like they are in basic Fallout, to them having more mechanics like they do in Fallout 4. It's nothing as advanced as that game has, but it is still pretty neat that Old World Blues adds some pretty unique mechanics for 2 of its enemies. First off, Robo-Scorpions explode when they die. That's the obvious one. And the military and police cyberdogs can maul the player and pin them to the ground. Now, of course, Fallout 4 took this concept and ran with it, and that game has much more advanced enemies than anything in New Vegas or 3. But I still think it's commendable that Old World Blues was willing to experiment a little bit, and in the process of doing so, created some pretty unique enemies. And while I'm on the topic of neat new mechanics, I thought I'd mention the Scientist Gloves that can apply a status effect to your enemy if you score a critical hit. Right, the main quest, sorry. So, we collect the 3 pieces of technology for the think tank, which, by the way, the stealth suit section is... That was me trying to click my mouth to show a sign of approval, like, in Italian. I'm kind of dehydrated, sorry. We return to the think tank with some interruptions from Mobius, and well, they have no idea what they do. Like, Klein has no idea how the tech works. We gotta give Klein a little bit of help. And when we do, he discovers a few weaknesses in the Forbidden Zone's defenses. Klein directs us to go out and defeat Mobius once and for all. But before we do that, I want to talk about a few last-minute things in Old World Blues. First off, Old World Blues is a DLC full of character. Everything about it oozes personality, and it also has a lot of great characters. Get it? Because it has a lot of character. Okay. None of the characters in Old World Blues, aside from, like, Mobius, Dala, 8, and O, I guess, are super deep or anything, but they're all memorable and fun. I really don't have any other way to describe them. They're just a lot of fun. They're a lot like Desmond and Calvert from Point Lookout. Zany, over-the-top characters that take what personality traits they do have to ludicrous extremes and deliver funny, light-hearted dialogue. And are never meant to be taken totally seriously. It's a fantastic combination where you know that if you start to think about the characters too hard, you'll come over the realization that not much of it makes logical sense, and it's fine because the game doesn't expect them to. You can revel in the two-dimensional joviality while giving your brain some rest. The sheer number of characters is also a little impressive, considering how memorable each one can be. So we've made our way to the Forbidden Zone here, after all 9,345 fucking goddamn Robo-Scorpions. And, before we finally finish out this DLC, I'm just gonna say it, we're about to get bombarded by a lot of interesting stuff, so I'm going to tackle it one by one as it comes to us. The first thing we see when we enter the Forbidden Zone is the giant rad scorpion, that I'm going to name Frederick for convenience. Frederick here is one of the 2 bosses in Big Mountain, and is in my opinion the far better one. And in fact, I think Frederick is the closest thing that Fallout has ever had to a proper boss battle, at least the 3D games. I say this primarily because of how the various sync technologies are useful in his encounter, and how the player has multiple, even non-lethal, technically, methods of killing him. Players can activate protectrons and turrets to attack Frederick if they have the proper skills, and the design of Fred's arena gives different character types different ways of dealing with him. Stealthy players can sneak around the catwalk and shoot at him. Gun players can sit in the rooms around the catwalks and use them as cover while shooting out of the windows. Hackers can use the sonic emitter to gain access to the turrets, and melee characters can use the X2 antenna array to deal a little tiny bit more damage before they get 2-shot. However, the fight is kind of betrayed by its combat, the actual, nitty-gritty combat of it. Fallout New Vegas' combat was already far behind and much shallower than any other FPS games of its time and our time. So shooting and smacking and stabbing and blasting is already pretty boring in Fallout compared to other games. Obviously remedied a little bit by the sequel, but this is Fallout New Vegas back when we didn't have the technology to have recoil. Unfortunately, unlike other FPS games, Frederick doesn't have any kind of weak points you can exploit outside of VATS. There's no advanced mobility techniques to dodging his incoming laser blasts. There's just not much to it. But what really ruins this fight is how Frederick was handled himself. Fred is just a massively upscaled version of a normal Robo-Scorpion, which causes hitbox issues for both him and you. Fighting him without any of the fun extra mechanics basically distills down to a mouse-clicking competition, which is unfortunately true for a lot of the Fallout bosses. It's still a neat encounter, however, and the way that he explodes at the very end is pretty satisfying. We finally make it to Mobius, and he's not at all what you expect. He's quite silly and inviting, despite the, giant red scorpion. Now, I didn't show it off in this video, I just didn't happen to record it, but Mobius actually takes the plot straight off the road and into some strange territory. Turns out that this entire time, he's not really the bad guy. The think tank kinda is. You can discover from Mobius that the think tank is actually quite dangerous, not unpartial to testing advanced and unstable technology on potentially innocent people without remorse, and that they're basically scientists unconstrained by morals, and that they're looking to possibly start venturing out into the wasteland to acquire more test subjects. Which is doubly bad because they would undoubtedly unleash their dangerous tech on the world. It makes for a fantastic plot twist because it makes perfect sense once it's unveiled to the player, and because it's how it's lightly hinted at before. We already know that the think tank has no morals, except maybe Dala, when it comes to people. They lobotomize them en masse, and Dala gets excited at the idea of things beyond the dome. Let me contrast this with a plot twist in Fallout 4's Brotherhood campaign involving Paladin Dance. Spoilers, obviously. During the Brotherhood campaign, the player and Dance secure an isolated facility in the hostile, barren deserts of the Glowing Sea, without any aid from any other Brotherhood forces. Once they do, Dance tells the player that he just so happens to need to stay behind, which totally telegraphs the entire fact that you're about to experience a plot twist. Then the player returns to Dance's commanding officer, who tells us that he's a synth, and somehow went into hiding and figured out also that he was a synth by the time that we do, and the officer wants him dead. Once Maxon finds him, you either kill him or get Maxon to spare him, but consider him dead to the Brotherhood of Steel, and after that, it serves no purpose to the story. It just ends right there and is mentioned all of once more. Fallout 4's twist comes from nowhere, immediately exposes itself to the player, sets up a contrived manhunt, and gets hand-waved away at the very last second. It's a plot twist in the main story that serves no further purpose than to set up Dance's character. On the other hand, Old World Blues' twist is subtly explained before it's finally exposed, makes perfect sense when it's revealed to the player, and changes your perception of its main antagonist, and also constructs the final major moral decision that determines the fate of the think tank. And it only goes to show how well written this DLC is. The only bad thing I could say about this plot twist is that it potentially sours the player's vision of the entire DLC. Up until this point, we thought this was all just zany fun, right? We thought this was all not meant to be taken seriously. And here comes Dr. Mobius, who kind of pulls the strings on that, and, well, he makes it seem a little bit more serious. We're kind of playing with the fate of a lot of people now. This isn't just some isolated story in a crater, potentially. And personally, I have no idea why, but it doesn't for me. Maybe it's just the fact that this DLC is entirely comprised of zany, wacky stuff and is so thick in it that you just can't destroy it. But Mobius' final explanation here didn't destroy the zany, wacky atmosphere I was playing in. It did make me start to question every little detail about the characters and the story, primarily because the twist provides new depth to them. It fills in some of the blanks that might have been left there if it didn't exist. And as such, when you start to think about Old World Blues seriously, you do start to think more about this plot twist and the various moral decisions you're about to have to make than you do about the seriousness of anything up until this point. In any case, Mobius introduces us to our brain, and it's kind of weird. The brain has its own personality and character, even though I don't think it shouldn't, because it's like our brain, and it should be like a part of us and not its own thing, even if it has been away from our body for like a day. But you know, whatever. The toaster has a character. I don't think I have any room to complain here. Once our brain is back in our noggin, we have to decide the fate of the think tank. You can kill Mobius and let the think tank run wild on the wasteland. You can kill the think tank and, stop their potential reign of evil once and for all at the cost of, well, killing all of them, which is a little sad because you might have actually gotten attached to them up until this point. Or, if you have the stats, and by have the stats I mean use the console commands like I did, you can get the good ending where you trick the think tank into thinking that Mobius has taken over their star prodigy and can now finally control them inside their own home. Basically, you scare them into thinking that Mobius is just letting them live and do their scientific experiments in peace as long as they don't go out and try to test them on other people. Which means that really not much happens. Not much really changes in the good ending. The think tank is still restrained by Mobius. Mobius is still alive, they're still alive, and everything's at peace. Then we get another slideshow that talks about a lot of concepts that weren't really brought up in the main game, and then Old World Blues is more or less over. Old World Blues is a magical expansion. On the surface, it seems like it's just a sci-fi action-adventure, a big map, a lot of dungeons, a lot of guns to collect, and a whole lot of fun to be had. And as it goes on, it turns into a story with a fantastic balance between seriousness and crazy, that ends off with a moral choice that should be the expected quality of Fallout moral choices. A good one. And on top of this, it also retains the adventure it initially advertised. You're still free to go around and explore to your heart's content, and once the DLC is over, you can go back and just do everything you didn't do. It's chock full of a lot of interesting characters to learn, a lot of content to go and explore. You can do the main quest at whatever pace you like. It doesn't get serious up until the end, and very rarely for a Fallout DLC, you can come back to it whenever you like. You always have a reason to come back because it provides a player house. It's a fantastic piece of content. It's what all the DLCs should aspire to be. A good, self-contained story with a lot of extra content and a lot of memorable, fun characters to learn about. And hopefully, the incoming Far Harbor DLC, which is, by the way, most likely what we're going to see next, will be just as good. I personally don't expect it to be as good, but hey, maybe we can shoot for Point Lookout. If you haven't already, please play through this DLC. You are missing out on a lot. Just go play it. It's amazing. That's all I have to say about it. I'm done here. It's amazing. Go play it. Hi everybody, thank you for going through this entire critique. This is a little bit of a longer video compared to 90% of all YouTube content, I know, and it's hard to keep your attention on something a lot if you don't have, a lot of interest in the subject matter or something like that, or if the player, or I guess the video maker, excuse me, this part isn't scripted by the way, isn't entertaining. So I'm glad to know that I've at least entertained, one person who's hearing this, hopefully. Please remember that if you are interested in subscribing to this channel, watch a couple of my other videos, preferably my Fallout 3 Point Lookout critique, because I think that's my second best video, before doing so you can get a general informed opinion on what's going on with this channel. Additionally, if you have a problem with this review, please tell me in the comments and refrain from downvoting, because downvoting doesn't actually matter on YouTube. It is a farce. It still sends videos higher up in search rankings and related video rankings. So by downvoting, you're making it so that a video gets more eyes. It's seen more, which if you don't like it, probably isn't what you want. That, and I can also respond to a comment. I can't respond to a dislike, right? So yeah, if you have a problem with me, tell me in the comments, please. And aside from that, I will be seeing you guys next time, probably with Far Harbor, and then after that, probably with Overwatch, and then, we'll just wing it from there. Have a nice... It's 9:04 right now, and have a nice night.